Hey, welcome back. It's Yvonne Wakefield, YouTube channel, podcast, author, artist, and Artur, my producer, just said, now I have to say I'm a YouTuber. I'm still having a hard time with figuring out Facebook on the internet and Google and stuff, so YouTuber is kind of like this new acronym to me, but we're going to work with it. So tonight I'm going to be reading from chapter 23, Babe in the Woods, Building a Life One Log at a Time. Zachary's hanging out with me. When they know I arrange the pillows like this, they both jump up here. Henry just jumped down. He's the deaf dog. So last week we did chapter 22. And so it was like all the hard work I'd been doing really took a toll on my body. I went to a doctor's, which was like a really abusive exam. I filled up my truck with a bunch of boards, floorboards. They fell out on the road when I was driving up to the cabin or my building site. And I said, screw it, I'm done. I'm leaving this place. And then Jim came around and changed my mind. That's the recap. So on chapter 23, it's called Progress Is as Progress Does. Ready, Zach? Don't lick your paws tonight. He was just up at the cabin last week. Oh, and he stepped in this big pile of pitch, like major pitch. You know how the dogs, how you have your paws like this? His were all stuck together like this. So how do you get this out? Butter and turpentine. Fortunately, I had more turpentine than butter, but we got it done. All right, 23. We are right now, the cabin's been built pretty much. I'm laying the porch floor and we're getting on with it. So here I'm working alone, and laying down the porch floor is a breeze compared to laying up log walls. With Tank, and remember Tank is the name of the truck, with Tank backed right up to the foundation, I can stand on the tailgate, hoist the boards from the bed up onto the porch, and then shove them one at a time across the joists, creating a platform to work off. I saw boards to length, clamp them tight with the squeeze bar, and hammer them level with 16-penny nails. Sweat drips into my eyes, stinging them as I work, wearing only a tool belt and boots. By late afternoon, lavender shadows break against the golden walls, and my butt is sunburnt red. I pull on my shirt and shorts, lean against the logs, and sit with my legs stretched out, admiring the solid construction taking place outside and inside of myself. Most of those August days are above 90 up here, a consistent 10 degrees cooler than in the valley, and I'm out of sodium tablets. If you remember before, the Mormon woman kind of mothered to me, gave me sodium tablets because I was sweating so much. And I'm out of sodium tablets. In the evening, after I have eaten and bathed, changed into clean clothes, and crawled into the sleeping bag, there's only the satisfied feeling of accomplishment left in me. Less than a week before, I was sick to my stomach and screaming my head off at spilt boards. How you getting along up there? Dan Gray greets me the next day, Thursday, in Chester's parking lot. Tank's oxidized green patina, a red flag, that he's spied the right truck. He leans into the driver's side window so I can get out. I'm ready to put in windows. Got any at your place? I doubt I could get much of a deal, though, but Dan at least wouldn't have to look far. This is how I learn about baits. The next morning at 8, I pick up Dan at his place. We drive east past Prairie City, up and over Austin Summit. Turn here. Dan points to a gravel road off the 2-lane bridge highway. Now go right. I steer Tank into a dirt road and follow it until we become into a clearing and a pond. Welcome to Bates. Dan opens his door. I stay behind the wheel, looking out on a place clearly hit by the Andromeda strain. House foundations and dismantled buildings line a deserted street. A yellowed curtain blows out of an open paint-flaked window, the only side of that house left standing. A bathtub rusts in a sea of weeds. Peeling doors creak on rusty hinges in a Sprite mountain breeze. The only life this town has to offer. Used to be a lumber town. Now everyone's moved away. Dan has walked around the truck, his elbows against the windowsill. What's left behind is for anyone to take. I lean into the door and he steps aside. When I was younger, I had a friend in Bates. Spent part of the summer out here. Used to swim in the log pond when everyone was done working for the day. Dan stares out at the stagnant wallow filled with waterlogged logs. There was a dance house and school, too. Bates was a real family town, maybe 400 people, and they all lived right here. He nods toward the foundation of company houses. Within an hour, we have pried out and filled the truck with windows of all shapes and sizes, 2 solid doors, tools without handles, and a kitchen sink. We do not take soft objects because I believe they hold on to ghosts. I don't mention this to Dan, who has his sight set only on things made of metal and wood. And I've no need of old curtains for windows I don't have or bedding with memories I don't want to share. Back at Dan's house, we unload the doors and tools, fix them up and sell them like they were new. Dan holds out a rake head, hammer head, shovel face, all rusty and needing handles to make them useful again. I drive slowly back up the last stretch to the building site, careful not to rattle windows of varied sizes and wooden frames of sketchy integrity. A kitchen sink is also in the bed, and other practical items made of wood and metal waiting to be spirited into the cabin. Pitch and gable are terms defined as work progresses to the roof. Dell, who doesn't make deliveries, said, "I'll bring them up myself," when I went to his mill the week before to order 4x8s for rafters. Monday soon enough? Dan Gray says, "You up that high already?" when I go to his house to ask him the best place to buy new truck tires and tell him I'm about ready to lay the roof. Most people use Les Schwab. He pulls at his cauliflower ear. "But I got a friend in Boise who can get you a better deal." Dan examines his hand, wipes it on his pants. "I'll call him tonight." On Monday morning, Jim struggles with me some 2x4s and a 26-foot-long, 10-inch diameter ridgepole. "Hold it steady," he yells. "Drop it if you have to. Just wait till I'm out of the way." To get that ridgepole all the way from the ground to the top requires the dexterity of Spider-Man and the strength of the Hulk, neither attributes of which I possess. Jim does his best to make up for my shortfall and hoists the butt onto my shoulder. "Hold it there." With my back braced against the outside wall, I shoulder the log. Jim lifts up the opposite end and places it on a pre-nailed block. Then he takes the log from me, lifts it higher, and sets it onto another pre-nailed block. I climb up, get a foothold, and steady the log again. This way we work the ridgepole up one log at a time. Then it will be temporarily held in place by a 2x4 A-frame until we can attach it to the walls. By mid-morning, it's already 85 degrees, and like Jim, I work without my shirt, though careful to keep it within reach. I'm expecting Dell to arrive with his load of rafters and 2x4 roofing boards, none of which we can nail down until the ridgepole is set. It has taken all morning to haul the ridgepole up onto the loft floor and to build the frame to keep it in place. After lunch, Jim and I plan to set the pole using block and tackle. Until then, we take a deserved break at the creek and do not hear the rumble of a truck. So we are surprised to see Dale walking down the path, and I'm glad we have both dressed for lunch. Join us, I say. Dale goes back to his truck and returns with a can of stewed tomatoes and sardines. Peanut butter and cheese? I offer him the jar and Tillamook block. No, thanks. But can you help me with this? Dale sits in the shade and hands me a church key. I don't understand how you can run a sawmill, but you can't use a can opener, I tease. Then I look at his right hand with a missing digit as he looks away. I open the can of tomatoes and wind off the sardine lid before he has to ask. Dale opens his pocket knife, spears the tomatoes and the silver fish, slurps the tomato juice and tosses the can. He does not drink the fish oil, and there's a backsplash when he flings that flat into the tin in the brush pile. After lunch, and we have unloaded the boards just below the cabin, and I have paid him, Dale asks, "You want help with that?" He points to the ridgepole and looks to Jim, not me. Jim looks to me. Even though he knows what I need to be done and I've no idea how to position a ridgepole, I'm gratified that Jim still considers me boss. Sure do, I say, and the three of us crawl up the ladder onto the loft to get to work. Dale's been scabbing together walls and hammering down roofs since before Jim and I were born. Instinctively, I know Jim appreciates his expertise, and I stand out of the way until called upon to act as a gopher. Jim sights the ridgepole, and Jim on the other end with the level. A skosh higher, too much. Dale keeps his eye line to the pole. Good now a skosh to your left. The ridgepole is leveled and then hammered temporarily in place by 2x8s. If it was just me and Jim working, we would be juggling that ridgepole until nightfall. Once it is set, we start in and laying the rafters 2 feet apart under Dale's watchful eyes. By late afternoon, the rafters are nailed and ready for floorboards, which, like the rafters, have to be carried up 2 flights of log steps. Again, the three of us work as a team. I stand below, lift and shove each 10-foot board up the porch where Dale takes it, carries it across the main floor, then shoves it up the loft opening where Jim takes it. Our pace is brisk, progress steady, until it is broken by an unexpected visit. Hey, Dan, I say, surprised to see him trudging up the road, his reassembled face flushed by the hike. Hey, he hollers back. I almost bottomed out trying to drive up here. Came to tell you my friend in Boise said he could get you tires for half of what they want in John Day. Dan scales the ladder and pulls himself up on the porch. Whoa! He looks inside the main floor, out at the view from the 2 cut windows, and then up at the loft ladder. Nice. Real nice. I invite him up into the loft and hope the ladder won't break and his massive bulk won't get stuck in the floor opening. It's a tight squeeze, but Dan manages to pull himself through. Howdy, he says to Jim, gives him a brisk nod. Hi, he says to Dale. Haven't seen you for a long time. Dale manages a strained hi, adding, that's because you never paid me for the lumber you took. For $140, Dan says he can get me new back tires from his friend in Boise. Michelin biased and rib traction, he says, making sure the other men hear him. And what's better, Dan has come to offer his courier service for free. Here, let me do that. Dan takes a board from me as I'm prepared to hand it up to Dale. You just pay for gas and I'll take the truck to Boise on Wednesday. Dan hands off another board to Dale. Okay. Can you pick me up 6 rolls of roofing paper too? Sure. Dan has taken over my job. Jim, I yell, what weight of roofing paper do we need? 20 pounds, he yells. Then drives a 16-penny nail straight through a 2-inch thick roof board. Dan Gray stays and helps lay the roof. With 3 hammers and 3 men and me, there is some sharing to be done. My hammer is shared the most, but only between Dan and me. The men confine their words to nail it there or cut it here. Before Dan arrived, words between Dale, Jim, and me were never strained. Now there is shared tension where before there was joking camaraderie. By early evening, half the roof is down, and so is the working morale. Come to my house late afternoon Wednesday. If I'm not there, keys will be under the seat. Dan leaves his moldy station wagon on the shoulder of the road, well below my camp, and I can't figure out why he didn't bottom out on the eliminator. He drives away in the tank with a check written out to him for $200. Before Dale gets into his own truck, he turns, looks at the cabin, then me, and down the road. You be careful, girl. After work on Wednesday, I drive Dan's car to town and find Tank parked in the shade of the cottonwood tree. The driver's side is dented in, and a bungee cord hangs from the door jamb. 2 new tires and assorted tins and white plastic containers fill the truck bed. Honey, wheat, rye, barley, powdered milk are written on each. Enough to last my family a year. Dan comes up from behind me, lifts out a 5-gallon metal can of honey, and carries it back to the shed. I follow him. Stacked up against a wall inside are more of the same containers and cans. Like the Nelsons, the Gray's shelves are lined with jars filled with everything from pickled asparagus to zucchini. I follow Dan back to the truck. Here, give me a hand. I help him unload the rest of the white containers, and in doing so, learn again about the Mormons' food supply and why my truck still has bald tires and how the door got dented. I kind of sideswiped another truck. Can probably just push that dent out. He points to the side. But the latch, Dan pulls the bungee cord. Well, that'll take some work. This'll do for now. See? He wraps the bungee cord around the door jamb and hooks it into the elbow rest inside. He points to the tires. I didn't have time to get them put on and get back here by afternoon, like I said. So just go to Les Schwab. They'll do it for you. And the 6 rolls of roofing paper? Dan pushes his putty nose and searches for answers. The tires cost more. My friend got you Michelin's best around. Then there was sales tax. Plus, this thing really eats up gas. He pats the dented door. I get in the passenger side, slide over, and reach behind the seat for the 2 pillows. Dan has removed the blocks from the clutch. I drive to Les Schwab, standing up to shift and accelerate. There I learn about my new tires when I pay extra to have them put on and balanced. They don't charge for duct taping on the 2x4 chunks I find behind the back seat, buried under empty bags of pork rinds and Coke bottles. What'd you buy retreads when new Michelin's only cost a little bit more? Asked the young man with oily hands and a white Les Schwab monogram shirt that appears he has worked hard to keep clean. Those aren't retreads, I lie. I do not even know what a retread would look like if it was staring me bald-faced. They're Michelin's, brand new. The young man must be a recent hire because his name is not monogrammed above the breast pocket holding a pen and a pressure gauge. Kid's so green he can't tell the difference between new and used tires. Sure are. He kneels and points to a seam on the tire face. That there is why these tires are retread, meaning these are old tires with new rubber put on the top. Won't last long. They peel apart. I bend over and stare at the tire seam, invisible to the uneducated eye. Just out of curiosity, I ask, how much for new? He goes behind the customer service counter, thumbs through a greasy catalog. 2 rear end traction bias. He runs his finger down a column, pencils some numbers, and says, $93, including installation. and balance. And well, that's it for chapter 23, but I need to tell you there's a reference to Bates in here where I got my windows. I was in Condon, Oregon on the July 4th parade, and I met a woman who grew up in Bates, and they were having their reunion there last Saturday, but I don't know if they did it. But anyway, if you're ever around Bates, it's a state park now. It's no longer a vacant mill town. And anyway, we will see you next week. And always remember, stay hydrated. Bye-bye. Artur, you need to stay hydrated.